to Nicki's Crochet Podcast. I am so excited for you guys to be here for a new episode with a new designer that you get to know from a totally different perspective. I'm your host, Nicki from Nicki's Homey Crafts, and today's guest is Toni from TL Yarn Crafts. And the first thing I want to tell you guys is make sure you subscribe to my channel and her channel. You should see all the links down below so that you can keep up to date with all our new creations. So let me now introduce you to Toni. Hi, Toni. How you doing?
Hey, Nicki. I'm so good. How are you?
Great. I am so excited. You are one of those designers that I always look up to, and I'm like, oh, I want to be like Toni.
The feeling is mutual. Your hustle and the way that you crank out content, and it's always so polished. Like, I got my eye on you too.
Thank you. That literally is something I'm like gonna get read here because you're huge on all the social media platforms. YouTube, you took off. Instagram, you took off. I mean, for the last several years, you just exploded, and your content, your pictures and videos are always top notch. And I just love looking. I was like, oh, if I could be just like Toni, just a little bit, it's like, I don't know how she does that. Seriously, how do you have time?
Incredibly. Honestly, I've found that there was a period where it was very much like hustle. However many plates I could keep up in the air, I was like, that was the goal. Yes. It was like, I want to be everywhere. I want to be doing everything. I want to work with everyone. And I finally got into this point where I'm like, okay, I'm much more comfortable sustaining rather than growing at this point. And I think everybody's business kind of comes to this point where it changes. And I'm just kind of embracing that TL Yarn Crafts is changing a little bit.
I love that. That gets me actually right to the first question. So how did you came about doing crochet as a business? Like, how did you, when was the trigger point saying, you know what, this is a business. Like, this is not just a side hustle anymore. And I want this to be my thing. When did that happen? What triggered you?
Yeah, that's an interesting turning point because I get asked a lot like how I got into crochet or how I even started a business. But there was a very specific point where it went from a side hustle to a full-time business. And that's when I decided to quit my day job. Like TL Yarn Crafts was starting to do really well. And it got to this point, and I'm sure anybody else who has a side hustle has experienced this. I was bringing my side work to work. I was like formatting emails and I was responding to DMs or whatever it was kind of during work time. And it's terrible because I've committed to working for this company, but there were just certain things that were happening in my business that started to become time sensitive. It couldn't wait until after work or the weekends. And I think that's really when it started becoming a business where it needed my time during work time. And that's really what kind of started my gears turning like, oh, is this something I could do full time? If I gave this business 35 or 40 hours a week, could I really turn it into something? And once I decided that the answer was yes, I was like, well, I better start drafting up my 2-week notice. I gotta go.
Oh my God. I hear you. I have a similar story, but I'm not going to get into that right now because mine is a little bit less on my part of it on moving this on, but it turned into something. I had really fun questions from designers coming my way once that turning point hit. So but let's talk about your style because you have a certain style and you didn't start out that way. So when did you realize there was a certain thing that changed you to a specific style? Because I can tell you have certain models, you have certain colors, you have certain stitches you use over and over again. Was it because of your audience tending you to it because they loved it, they bought the patterns, or was it because you said, you know what, that's what I love, that's what I want to do?
Honestly, it was a collection of those things. So on the one hand, I started getting into a groove in what I like to design, the stitches I like to use, the techniques I was interested in, but also the type of maker that I wanted to make for. Because I find that when we spread ourselves too thin, we're not really talking to anyone in particular.
Right.
So I had to decide who is it that I want to attract to TL Yarn Crafts. And I decided that I really wanted to capture people very early in their crochet journey who were just learning about yarn, just learning about tools, just learning about stitches, maybe trying a garment for the first time, like people who were really new, but also open to trying something that was a little out of the box. So what helped me was kind of building some consistency within my business. So that's when you started seeing the same models. When I started using a very specific color palette, when I really narrowed down the type of stitches that I would use, I would
Yeah.
occasionally introduce a technique, but still tie it back to something that felt familiar within TL Yarn Crafts. So I wanted people to kind of tether themselves back to just kind of the central nuances of my business, but also stretch far enough that they're like, oh, I learned something new, or I tried this thing and it gets me really excited. I've always understood that TL Yarn Crafts was kind of perhaps a starting point for a lot of people.
Yes.
And that they would, then find somebody like you or another designer who would really take them to the next level. I get asked a lot, like, when are you going to do something more advanced? And I'm like, I don't know that I will, because there's still a
Yeah.
lot of people who are very much at that beginner stage and are
Yes.
comfortable there or just being introduced to crochet. So really comfortable in this spot because I get to catch people when they're really excited and like really fresh in the craft.
I love that. I feel the same way for my business, actually. So that's why we talked a little earlier about this. Like, we're kind of similar in certain things. And I actually love that because I have the same thing. My audiences tend to be on I want to learn tips and tricks, which is why I aim for a lot of those. I really talk about the behind the scenes and things. And I love because that way we can actually incorporate things together. You work on certain projects and I talk about how do you get to that point, which is really fun. And that's how we as community grow together, designers helping each other out, and I absolutely love that. That is amazing. But now that you talked about stitches, I kind of want to know, is there a stitch or a stitch technique that you always want to try but never did?
That I've never tried. Oh man, one technique that I actually bought a book for, I still haven't cracked it open. It's Mosaic crochet. So I've tried it out literally one time to see if I like the stitch. I did not have the patience to learn that day. I shouldn't even have tried. I know myself better than that, and I was like, it's not the stitch, it's me. So I'm just gonna take a step back. But it's definitely something that I want to dip my toes in further, not necessarily as a designer, but just as a maker, because crochet is still very much a hobby for me.
Yeah.
I don't plan to take everything that I know and incorporate it into my business. So I would love to kind of get Mosaic crochet down as a technique and maybe make a couple things just for myself.
I love that. Yeah, it's a very interesting technique because you have to layer your brain into thinking certain ways because the graph
Yeah.
doesn't show you the whole picture. I actually, when I do Mosaic, I make a second graph just to show myself when I need to change the colors or where I need to go down because you have to layer it in your head or you have to visually see it in front of you. It is a
Yeah.
little bit of a tricky thing, but it's beautiful in the end. So I
Gosh,
totally get it.
it's so gorgeous. And I've always considered crochet this very 3D type of technique, right?
Yes.
Because we can put our hook anywhere and our stitches can go a million different directions.
Yes.
And I feel like Mosaic crochet kind of adds another layer on top of that because you're working with multiple colors and you're going in different directions, and some have to go in the front and some have to go in the back.
Yeah.
It's very methodical, and I love that about it. I am a nerd for all of the math of crochet. I just have to make sure I'm in the right headspace to learn something new. That's all.
Yes, for sure. But has there been a stitch that you attempted and then said never again?
You know what? No, I try and stay open because I feel like there's a progression within crochet. And I never want to be the person that's like, I tried cables and it just didn't work out for me. Now I just don't do cables, because I encourage people who are learning from me to be like, stay open. Who knows if maybe a year from now you'll try the exact right cable pattern and it'll be perfect for you. So I definitely try and stay open. I know there's still a whole lot that I don't know. And I'm still very much discovering crochet right along with the people who are learning from me.
I love that because that's actually true. And a lot of makers or crocheters out there, they don't actually know or realize that we still learn every single day too as designers. There's a lot of things we personally still don't know. There's a lot of things that scare me, like garments that you do all the time. Like just thinking about all the different sizing and grading, it gives me a headache just thinking about it. I do want to, but do I have the patience for it? That's a totally different question.
Really different. No, and I understand that. What I appreciate about being a designer, especially an independent designer, is that we can have different specialties.
Yes.
There's certain things that we do and we're great at and we love it because ultimately we're trying to take these things that we're sharing and
Yeah.
impart that wisdom to somebody else. So if we
Yes.
don't have a passion for it, it's going to be hard to translate that to somebody else. And
Yeah.
I appreciate that you're like, garments, I appreciate that you do, but not for me. And there's definitely things within crochet that I see other people do and I'm like, thread crochet, girl, that is all you. You could keep that, not for me. Like it's, but I can appreciate how beautiful these
Yes.
techniques, these ideas, and these yarns are. But everything isn't for everyone, and I
Very
think that's
true.
all right. Yeah.
Very true. Just like miniature crochet or, certain thing. I mean, miniature crochet, I don't even know how to hold this thing. I was like, how do you do this? Like either I'm clumsy or I mean, I have good vision, at least in front of me, but this is too tiny. How would you do that? I totally get that. Or our audience is pushing us to certain, can you do more of this? Can you do more of that? I'm like, I'll try, but I feel like I have certain things that I prefer doing, and that's where I'm familiar with. And I can see that on your things,
Yeah.
especially Tunisian crochet. Let's talk about Tunisian for a second. How did you even get into this? I mean, you suddenly turned and it was suddenly a lot of Tunisian, which I love. Don't get me wrong, I love it. But how did you get
Yeah.
into it?
Definitely. So that's an interesting story because this is also how I learned that I believe in ghosts. So funny story. I was at a yarn convention with a bunch of friends. It was my first time going to Vogue Knit Live in New York, and I had kind of peeled off to go to the restroom. And when I was coming back to find my party, I ran into this woman at the Malabrigo booth, and she had this giant hook. Like this thing had to be like 3 feet long. It was huge. And like she was working with this super chunky like rope yarn. And I saw the tool and I was like, that's a crochet hook. I need to know what's going on over there. So I like race over. I probably look like a complete crazy person, but thankfully she indulged me and let me sit down and kind of talk to me a little bit more about Tunisian crochet, kind of show me the basics of this technique. So I took that excitement home with me and I went to YouTube where I learned everything. And I was looking up Tunisian crochet and surprisingly, I wasn't able to find like a lot of very
Hmm.
dedicated resources for
Yep.
learning or the basic stitches or
Yep.
understanding the technique. So I was like, okay, well, I'll go find what I need and try and synthesize this down. Maybe I'll become that person to
Yeah.
teach people Tunisian crochet.
Yeah.
So actually, Tunisian crochet was the very first video that was on my YouTube channel. It's the whole reason I started my channel.
Wow.
But I'll take it back to my ghost story. So all of that stuff happens, right? I go to Vogue Knit Live, I come home, I start my channel, everything's going well. That
Yeah.
first like 6 months completely exploded. Everybody wanted to learn this technique. It was
Hmm.
awesome. So I go back to Vogue Knit Live the following year. I go straight to the Malabrigo booth because I need to find this lady. And I'm talking to the folks that are there. And like, there was this lady here last year. She was doing this, that, and the other. And they're like, who are you talking about? What lady? There was nobody here. I don't know. Like they had
What?
no clue what I was talking about, Nicki. And I'm standing there and I'm like, and so my friends are with me as well. We'd all gone over there and I'm like, don't get me out here looking crazy. Like I know I learned it from somewhere.
Oh my
And they
God.
had no idea who I was talking about. So I'm like, ghost, guardian angel. I don't know what you want to call her, but
I
she
love
was
it.
there. I swear it. Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that. I love these stories. This is awesome. Like I believe in some of this stuff too. Yeah, totally. I have certain gut feelings. There's times when my husband asks me, he's like, "What's your gut telling me?" Because I'm usually right on it. I don't know what it's gonna be, but I'm
Yep.
right with my feeling. So I love that. This is so cool. Like I learned Tunisian crochet from Crochet Kim. I'm sure you know her.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
she has like, I don't know, 20, 30 Tunisian crochet books out there. And she didn't start her videos right away. I think she started like 20, 25 years ago. I don't even know how old. But she started a lot of things where there was no Tunisian, and I was like, how did you learn all that? And she's like, I went back very far and saw something and made up something. I mean, that's kind of
Yeah.
cool. And I love that it took off for you. I mean, I tried a few Tunisian stitches here and there. I have an ebook myself, just like you do. So people love it. It's because it's so
Yeah.
different. It's a combination of Tunisia of crocheting and knitting, right? And I just love the idea of it, and
Yeah.
it's inspiring for a lot of things.
It
So I
is.
love that.
I think it's a fun thing for people to try because there's still
Yeah,
so many people that have never heard of it. Like I
very
feel
true.
like collectively as a society, we know what knitting and crochet is, but Tunisian
Yes,
crochet, the look of it, the feel of it, the
yes,
motion of it is still very new for people. And I think
very true.
that's really exciting. Something new to try.
That is true. The only thing that I don't like about it is there's no ergonomic hook that you can try using.
Right.
There's no
Yeah.
way you can do that because you have to have it flat. Like it can hurt your hand for a while if it's very, very long. So I've
Yeah.
noticed that when it gets heavy, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, I'm gonna take a break for a little bit. I'm not used to this anymore. So
Well, you know what's interesting? So when I first started looking up Tunisian crochet, because I have quite large hands, which I love using ergonomic hooks because they're usually a bit longer. They fit my
yes,
hands a lot better.
yes,
And that was one of the challenges I had with Tunisian crochet, 'cause since you can't have anything fancy on the handle, like
yes.
my hands would kind of cramp up a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
especially for the smaller hooks. So I started looking up ergonomic knitting needles. And I
Oh,
was like, why aren't there, if there can be ergonomic knitting needles, I feel like there should
very
be
true.
ergonomic Tunisian crochet hooks. But there's, when it comes to the tools of Tunisian crochet, I think since it is a
Yeah,
relatively new craft for a lot of people,
yeah,
kind of falling behind with any innovations in that area.
very true.
Because it's hard to find ergonomic ones. It's also quite hard to find metal Tunisian crochet hooks.
Yes,
And I know there are a lot of people that favor metal. I only know of one company that does them. I have
yeah,
tried several times to get kind of a more streamlined process
yeah,
for people to purchase them, and they're not in that place. But
yeah,
I think there's still a lot of opportunity with this craft from the
very
business
true.
side and the learner side. So I'm really curious to see where it goes from here.
It's very true. And I also noticed that I'm different for as a crocheter. Like I prefer certain hooks type as a
Yeah,
normal crochet versus Tunisian. Tunisian, I like the other style
yeah,
because it pulls it better.
mhm,
And I'm like, I don't like the other style because it doesn't grab the yarn the way I want to because you're in a different position. So
definitely.
I totally realize that. And I love it. Maybe a few companies are listening to this podcast and realizing we need this, and maybe we'll inspire them to make the hooks that we actually truly want. So maybe
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
that would
One day.
be amazing. But I want to kind of switch it up a little bit here for a second, and let's talk about your kitty cats. We both have kitty cats. So
Yeah.
have they done something crazy with your yarn or a crochet project yet? Have they done anything that says, oh my God?
You know what? I am a little underwhelmed because my cats could care less about yarn. They do not even care. Like I've always wondered, like one day I'm gonna come home and my studio is gonna be a wreck because my cats just went crazy in there. Never happened. And some people I know it's the type of yarn, like some
Mm-hmm.
cats will prefer the acrylic over the
Mm-hmm.
merino or vice
Yeah.
versa. No, they could care less. And I'm like, come on, y'all, I want some fun stories to tell.
Well,
They don't care. I will say they absolutely love sitting on my projects. If I
mm-hmm.
ever block anything and like put
Yeah.
my mats on the ground, my
Yeah.
cat Sheba will come just lay right on it. She loves that. But no, thankfully they're not too crazy when it comes to yarn. They just want to sit on it and lay on it. That's all.
Yeah. For me, that's too. My cat likes to lay on it while I'm working on it. I'm like, I can't grab the yarn that way. And for some reason, I know a lot of people know that cats are actually colorblind. They only see certain colors. But for some reason, my cat, my gray and white cat, loves my gray yarn. And she will
Mm,
pick it up and carry it over. She doesn't always do it, but sometimes she does. And she will mess with it like it's a baby. Like literally
yeah.
like picks it up and brings it over like a gift, like a present. Like, here you go.
Oh, that's adorable. Oh, she thinks your yarns are little babies. Oh my
I
gosh.
know. And I'm like, what? It's so cute. And I totally put my gray yarn in my shelf on the bottom, which I didn't even
Yeah.
notice. I'm like, great. Now she grabs from there all the time.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
I love that. Yeah. But let's hop into your hobbies because I know crochet is a major thing for you, but I know you have other hobbies too. Let's get to know you outside of the crochet world. What do you do on the daily, or not per se daily, but normal time, outside of crocheting? What's your hobby like?
Yeah, honestly, one of my biggest hobbies, and I don't even know if you can really call this a hobby, but I absolutely love watching movies.
Oh,
Like, I love the experience of going to the
yes.
theater. I
Yes.
got to get my snacks, and they just put in the reclining seats in the movies by me. So it's
Yes.
this whole immersive thing. And I just really enjoy that
Hmm.
because it's 2 hours that you're taking a break from everything. There's no
Yes.
phone. There's no interruptions. You can just enjoy this entertainment and deal
Yes.
with all that stuff later. And
Exactly.
honestly, as a designer, and you probably experienced this as
Hmm.
well, it's very rare that we can completely shut off.
Yes.
Like there's always an email to check or,
Hmm.
somebody to get back to or whatever. And just going to the movies is very nice. And then outside of that, I absolutely love to read, mostly audiobooks. And
Yes.
I really like to ride my bike. I got a bike last summer
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
I commit to going for a bike ride every sunny day of the year. So
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. I committed myself to doing yoga as many times as I possibly can. And now also working out because of health issues and stuff. And it really has been helping. And I've been binge watching shows on Netflix, which also has been helping. And I totally live the same way as you do. Like we need to shut off. And I've noticed that when I can binge watch certain things, I'm completely out. Like I can focus
Yes.
on this and I can relax. And then suddenly I get all these ideas and inspired and motivated
Yeah.
again. And then I feel like I'm doing a better job than running my business because I was able to binge watch some things. Like, I love it.
To be able to like turn off those parts of our brains that are always really overactive. And I have the same exact I have the same situation where it's like as soon as I can kind of zone out on
Mm-hmm.
something, that's when the ideas start
Yeah.
popping up, whether it's a new design or let me get in
Mm-hmm.
touch with this person and start this thing. Like it's same, very much the same. Wow, we've got so much in common, Nikki. I
We
had no idea.
do. Okay, at some point we have to hang out in person. We need to make this happen somehow. I know you're kind of on the other side of the country, but we'll make it
You know
happen
what?
somehow.
I've been to the West Coast one time. I went to San Diego for an event with the Crafters Box, and I adore it out there. Oh my gosh, I never want to leave.
I
Oh,
know, and I live here. Like, if you ever come back, come on, we got to meet up. We just do something. We have
wait, let's
to.
do it.
Okay, so do you have some funny questions or funny scenes that happen in your crochet life where you're like, what just happened here? You know, like a maker sent you a weird message or a comment or someone got something confused. Do you have like a funny story that you keep remembering? Like, oh my God, I don't even know how this happened.
You know, so one of the funny things that happens, I recently released a book.
Hmm.
There are no video tutorials or anything that come with my book. So kind of the latest questions that I'm fielding are just certain things out of the book that people are pulling out. So like, what colors, how did I pick my
Yeah.
colors? Or how did I pick these yarns or different yarn substitutions? And I received a message from a woman and she was asking specifically about one of the yarns that I use because it's available only online.
Yeah.
And it was very much I can't find this yarn. Can you just buy it and send it to me? And this woman put her credit card information in her email.
Oh my
And I said, thank God I'm trustworthy, ma'am, because you would have had a very big mess on your hands.
Yes.
So what's surprising though is that has happened more than once. I don't know what it is about this book and the yarns and projects in here specifically, but I've gotten more than one request of people saying, here's my credit card information,
Oh my
make
God.
this a kit for me. And I'm like, folks, please.
Oh
You
my God.
it started happening so much that I had to make like an email template to reply to people and say, please do not send me your credit card information. So anybody who's out there, do not send your credit card information to anybody via email, please. Y'all got to
No.
stop doing this. You got to stop. Like,
Oh my gosh, that I had wow. I mean, I have
when,
similar ones where people would like send me like I have ebooks. I'm like, I don't
yeah,
do physical books. Like I don't make enough money with them. I cannot, and I don't want to get into that just yet. I am
yeah,
not ready for this yet.
uh-huh,
But there's people who literally say, just I'll pay you extra. Can you just print it for me? I'm like, I promise you, you're gonna save more money just going to Office Depot and printing it out yourself. Like, don't
yeah,
make me do this. Or like bundles or whatever. Just print it for me. Like, this is 500 pages. I ain't print
yeah.
that.
I was like, I was like, I know that you're asking for this, but you don't actually want it. That's not really what, like, let me explain it to you. I'll break it down. You
Yeah,
can do the thing. Like, I love my customers. I
me
love
too.
every single fan of TL Yarn Crafts, but I do think there is a certain level of folks in our audience who we're so helpful and we're so present with them that they're
Yes.
like, oh, I'm going to request this outlandish thing and Toni's just going to do it because she's super nice. And I'm like, y'all, I am still running a business
Yeah.
and there are just certain things that we can't do. And,
Yeah.
I think it's still helpful for us to be like, here's a solution. I'm not going to do the thing for you, but here's a solution so you can do it for yourself. There's,
Exactly.
there's a level of
Exactly.
self-sufficiency that I think is missing in our audience. And, I don't mind being that person that's like, okay, here's how you're going to help yourself here.
Yes, yes. But I love talking about your business for a second. I want to ask a few more questions. I'm sure a lot of people love the behind the scenes here. Is there something that is what is your most favorite and most dreaded task when it comes to your crochet business?
Yeah. Honestly, my favorite part of my business is interacting with my audience.
Hmm.
I love replying to comments on YouTube and Instagram. I love when people reply to my email because part of my welcome series, I ask a few different questions and I
Yeah.
encourage people to reply and give me their answers. I really love that feedback. So I love just spending time with folks, even in-person events, just
Yes.
going, being around other yarny people. That's my favorite part. My least favorite part, probably paying my taxes. I don't love that. And I only say it because I just had to send off those checks and I was like, "Ooh, that hurts."
Oh,
But
I
you know
know.
what? Honestly, running a business, running a handmade business is such a privilege.
Yes.
And you know, I understand that there are some obligations that come with that, but
Yeah.
honestly, I if we could just cut that tax bill in half, that would be great because
I
it's
know.
a lot.
It
A
hurts.
lot.
I
And
get it. I get
and
it. Oh my gosh.
I'm sure you have this experience as well. Like we grind and we hustle really
Yeah.
hard in our businesses, and
Yeah.
sometimes it feels like, you know, why do I gotta give so much of my money away?
I
Um,
know, right?
I do wish there was a little bit more of a break for folks like us because, you know, while we're
Yeah.
not starving artists per se, we
Yeah.
work incredibly hard,
Very true.
um, for every dime that we make, and a lot of the money I make honestly gets reinvested right back into TL Yarn Crafts.
Very true.
So yeah, it's my least favorite part, but I understand it, but
I know.
oh man, I hate writing those checks. I really
I
do.
get it. But I kind of want to talk about your photography for a second,
Oh, sure.
because I love the idea that you have models and you have reoccurring models,
Yep.
right? So how did you even come up with the idea of having reoccurring models, and how did you find them, right? Is it family or is it just friends? And how did that come about? Because I absolutely love the idea. I'd love to do that. I just don't quite know how to do that. And I know there's a studio that you're doing it at, right?
Mhm. Yeah. So I know that I have several talents. Taking photos of people in my stuff is not really one of my talents though.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I wanted to get a professional photographer because they have the eye, they have the skills, they
Yes.
have the training to really pull out the best parts of this design that I've worked so
Yeah.
hard on. So I actually went into a photographer and model Facebook group for my local area, and
Cool.
that's how I found my photographer. I basically posted that I had this product that I
Yeah.
wanted photographed, maybe 30 minutes. I just need one person who's available. And she was one of the people that replied. So once I kind of had her in the program, I reached out to her and I said, "Hey, do you know of any models in the
Yeah.
area?" Because I know that she's done events before. There are very specific types of events that photographers do to go and practice, and they work with different models in different studios. So I knew she had that experience that I didn't. And she actually recommended my very first model, Shayra, who is one of the models from the book.
Yeah.
She recommended her to me. And then for my other models, I actually looked up so, and you can do this in just about any city. I looked for a hashtag on Instagram that was like
Oh.
Columbus models. So like for my
Oh.
local city. And I
Mm-hmm.
also put in 614 models, which is our area code here. So other models who have been using those hashtags, I was able to find them. And I knew they were in my local area because they were
I love
using those
that.
same hashtags. So that's how I found my other two models who've been absolutely amazing. But yeah, I didn't want to risk
Yeah.
my designs not coming across how I wanted them to
Yeah.
by taking those photos myself. I can do a flat lay all day long. That is
Yes.
like my sweet spot. But taking a photo of just this beautiful person wearing my stuff, I knew that I wanted a professional to handle that part.
Yeah, I'm thinking about doing that. For right now, I've been training my husband to take pictures of me.
Yeah.
So he's getting better and better. I'm actually very impressed, which is great because yarn companies even like them. So I'm happy with it so far. But at
Oh,
some point, I do want to do it too. I love taking pictures and I love landscaping pictures and things like that. But sometimes I don't know. I don't have the mod. I have two boys at home. They ain't gonna wear a shawl or something like that. That's not gonna work. So, at some point I do want to figure that out too, because I would love to hand that off and have someone else just take care of the whole thing. And, all I have to do is hand it off. So I love that. But let's talk about your book for a second here, because I'm like so excited. I have to still get my hands on one of them. Maybe a signed version. We'll see. We'll figure it out.
we'll talk after this. We'll
Okay,
get
but talk about it. How did that even come about? And I mean, I knew it's going to be a Tunisian. As soon as you said you have a book deal, I knew it's going to be Tunisian. But talk about it. How did you come up with these designs in there? And just simply talk about the book because it's amazing. And if anyone wants it, I'm going to put a link down below for anyone to get it.
Yeah, so surprisingly enough, I never anticipated that I would write a book. It was never part of my business plan at all. And I have been doing Tunisian stuff for a while. I kind of kicked that off in my business in 2017. And it wasn't until 2019 that I got a message from a publisher who said, like, hey, we were looking around YouTube. We absolutely love your stuff. Is this something you'd be interested in doing? And I was like, me? Really? I was so flattered. Like, I felt like my cheeks were red for like a
Oh,
week. I was just so, oh my gosh. But once I collected myself, I was like, yes, something I'm very interested in. And we kind of talked through it. I learned a lot in that process, just kind of like how you put together a proposal, how you talk in the publishing industry. Like, it was a whole different world for me, which was kind of cool. But once we kind of got all that stuff sorted out, got the contract signed, that was really when I was able to dive into designing. And that was really exciting because I was like, if I wanted to put together a collection of patterns for somebody who was learning this technique for the very first time, what would I want in there? Like, what are the must-have pieces? So I went with a lot of home decor pieces, blankets, I did a pillow and all those things. And I also put a couple garments in there. There's a sweater and a poncho and also several accessories. So I tried to have a combination of things that use different techniques. Some of them were very colorful and some were a little bit more plain. Some of them were larger projects and some of them were quite small. So whatever kind of beginner you are, you can jump into a project here. If you're the both feet, I want to do the biggest, most complicated thing ever for my first project, like, it's in here, or if you're the, very classic, I want to make some pot holders for my first project, a couple of squares, let's keep it easy, that's in here as well. So having that good mix of projects to kind of attract everyone interested in this technique was really important to me. And I think I put together a pretty good collection. I like it.
I think so too. And I've only seen pictures of it. And I see how you're interacting with your audience about it and getting people to go through the book and making things. And you have a hashtag with it too, which I really like because it gets the whole community together about one specific product. And I absolutely love it. I'm definitely going to get a book. I definitely want to try it out because I have been trying to get myself to do a few other projects from other designers just to test things out for myself and get a little bit extra knowledge here and there. So I definitely want to do that. I'm really excited. But if anyone wants to grab it, go check it out. There's a link down below for you, as well as Toni's YouTube channel and a link to her website, and of course a summary of this entire thing with all the links that you need. So I am so excited you were here. Thank you, Toni. I appreciate it so much, and thank you everyone who was here and listening. And be sure to share this video, subscribe to both of our channels. So thank you, Toni.
Yes. Thank you for having me, Nicki. It's been such a pleasure.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.